Peace be with you. Dear friends, welcome to Living Flame Podcast website and Facebook group. Gospel Reflections for 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Gospel according to St. Matthew chapter 22 verses 15 to 21. The Pharisees went off and plotted how they might entrap him in speech. They sent their disciples to him with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are a truthful man and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and you are not concerned with anyone's opinion, for you do not regard a person's status." Well, Jesus was doing that because Jesus' whole concern was to proclaim the good news, to bear witness to the Father, to communicate everything he heard from the Father. That was his mission, to establish his kingdom here on earth. And that's why he gave us that beautiful prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." That was the whole concern. And when Jesus was concerned with the mission of the Father, he would not in any way consider other theories. And that's why these Pharisees, the disciples of the Pharisees, came and asked, along with the Herodians, they wanted also support from the Herodians. "Teacher, we know that you are a truthful man." Jesus was always truthful, and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. That's why he had clearly told to Pilate that he came to bear witness to the truth. And Pilate had asked, "What is truth?" And I'm pretty sure these Pharisees did not know what was truth. "And you are not concerned with anyone's opinion. Tell us then," they say, "what is your opinion? Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not?" Now they were paying lots of taxes, and the Pharisees and scribes were against paying such taxes. And now they wanted to entrap Jesus in such a situation where if he would tell that you have to pay taxes to Caesar, then he would be against the Jewish people. And therefore they could conspire against Jesus to put him to death. Now, if he would say that there is no need of paying taxes, then that news will go through the Herodians, because Herod was a friend of Caesar. And consequently, they could entrap him in such a way that this news would go to the emperor. And the emperor would certainly send people to eliminate Jesus. And it was easy for the emperor to do that. And that's why Jesus was in some way put in a fix, in a very bad situation. But then Jesus knows how to tackle all such situations in a very prudent way. Jesus, knowing their malice, said, "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites?" Look at the words of Jesus. "You hypocrites, you come here to trap me, you come here to harass me, you come here to try to put me down. Show me the coin that pays the census tax." Then they handed him the Roman coin. He said to them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" They replied, "Caesar's." At that he said to them, "Then repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Now, very tricky situation where Jesus uses his divine intelligence to answer them very clearly what they should do. Now, their obligation to pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Well, that is what you want. Pay to Caesar what you have to pay to Caesar. And then you have an obligation also to pay to God what belongs to God. So there is no dispute at all here. If Caesar is the emperor, Roman emperor here in this world, you have to respect, you have to pay your taxes, you have to have that kind of attitude towards your government because they are the rulers, they do justice, and therefore you have the obligation of respecting those laws. But at the same time, you cannot neglect the law of God. So whatever is to be paid to God, you need to pay to God. Now, how can we think of paying God what belongs to God? Dear friends, this is a very important text to understand. Now, we all know in our modern society we have to pay taxes. We cannot avoid them. Otherwise, the government will come after us. But then what about paying what belongs to God? Dear friends, everything that we have received is from God. And therefore, we have a great obligation to show that respect and gratitude to God. You know, what belongs to God? Everything belongs to God. Our intelligence, our talents, our resources, our material things, our body, our mind, our family, everything belongs to God. It comes from God and it has to go back to God. And therefore, what we can do in our daily lives, keeping open our hearts in gratitude to God for everything He does. Of course, very often we insist on paying our tithes to the church. That is not so much insisted here. And I would consider paying to God what belongs to God, not the tithes. I would consider our sincere obligation to give back to God whatever way possible. I would add here, if you have some money, if you are using that money for maintaining your family, that is good. But a portion of it you can always set aside for the poor and the homeless. We can set aside little bit of our time for the poor and the homeless and the sick and the homebound. We can always set aside time for God, prayer, meditation, reading the Word of God, celebrating life through the Holy Eucharist, and visiting a church during our work, and spending some time in prayers, whatever way possible, whether it is meditation, reading prayers, or reciting rosary, or reciting breviary. You know, all these little things can be done to show that we are really grateful to God and we are trying our best to pay God what belongs to God. God does not want anything from us. He is fullness. You know, by our little respect to God, our adoration to God, God does not become bigger, or when we do not do that, God does not shrink. What is important is to show our deep gratitude. We have come from God and we have to go back to God. And therefore, in all our thinking, in our work, and dealing with our material things and family members and friends, we need to have this tremendous attitude of remembering God. You know, everything that we have is from God. We can sometimes boast, oh, I have worked hard and I have earned this money, I have earned this wealth. Right. You have worked hard and you have all this. But then God gave you your life, your strength, and good health. That is what God gives you. And that's why this last statement of Jesus is a wonderful point for meditation. Repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. And certainly we will be right before God and before the earthly authorities. God bless you.